I used to believe I was in control. I had the calendar packed with back-to-back meetings. The inbox always unread, the dopamine hits from every Slack, ping, every retweet, every client approval. I was thriving, or so I thought. In truth, I was just spinning, faster than I could see. My name's Noah, I'm 33, and at the time, I was working as a lead product designer at a startup in downtown Manhattan. Fast-paced was the job description. Praise-driven was the culture. You either moved like lightning or got left behind. And I was always moving. But there was this one moment, the kind that doesn't scream, just whispers. It started with a tightness in my chest on a Tuesday morning, the kind you ignore because deadlines don't care about discomfort. I took another espresso shot, slapped on a smile, and told myself, push through that night. I collapsed on my kitchen floor, just dropped. The ER called it a stress-induced cardiac event, a warning shot. Not a heart attack, but close enough. The doctor asked how much I sleep. I didn't answer. He asked if I ever disconnect. I laughed. A week later, and I was walking past a secondhand bookstore near Union Square. I wasn't looking for anything. I don't even remember stepping inside, but on a shelf near the window, a tattered paperback caught my eye. Rumi. The name meant little to me then. But on the back cover, there was one line, just one. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. I didn't know why, but those words stopped me cold. They clung to something raw inside me, something I didn't have a name for yet. I bought the book, shoved it into my bag, and forgot about it for a while. Back at work, everything resumed, or at least pretended to. I checked my vitals on a smartwatch. Now traded coffee for green juice, started saying mindfulness in meetings like it was a new feature, but nothing really changed. The noise came back, all of it. Emails, metrics, social media, dopamine. And underneath it, this strange silence, like something was trying to speak to me beneath the surface, and I just kept turning the volume up. That's when it happened. One morning, standing in a packed subway car on the 6 train, I froze, literally couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My vision tunneled. I gripped the pole like I was drowning. No one noticed hundreds of people surrounding me, and I had never felt more alone in my life. That was the moment, not the hospital, not the warning, not even Rumi's whisper. That one subway ride, that quiet collapse inside myself was what finally broke the illusion. I stepped off at 14th Street, walked outside, and deleted every social app on my phone. Cold turkey. I called my manager from the sidewalk and said I needed time. I didn't ask, I didn't explain. I just said I couldn't breathe in the life I had built anymore. And then I booked a cabin in the woods, somewhere in Oregon. Middle of nowhere, no signal, no Wi-Fi, one bedroom, one desk, one fireplace. I told people I needed a reset, but the truth, I had no idea what I needed. All I knew was that I was drowning in noise, and for the first time, I didn't want to swim. Before I left, I had dinner with my younger brother, Jason, former Marine, strong as hell, quiet in a way that felt earned. When I told him I was going off grid, he didn't laugh, he just nodded. Then he said something I didn't expect. Silence will break you first, but if you can stay, it'll put you back together. I asked him what he meant. He looked at me and said, stillness isn't peace, not at first, it's war, but it's the only war worth fighting. I didn't understand that then, but I would. The next morning I was on a plane heading west window, seat, no laptop, no plans. Just a journal, a pen, and that Rumi book I hadn't opened yet. I looked out at the clouds and felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years, fear not of failure. I was used to that. I wore it like armor. This was different. This was the fear of meeting myself in the mirror, without the roles, without the title, without the metrics. Just me alone. They say when the body collapses, the mind follows. But what they don't tell you is that when the mind collapses, when the illusion finally breaks, it's not loud, it's quiet. It's like waking up in a dark room. You've lived in your whole life only to realize there's a door. And outside that door is nothing you've ever known. I didn't go to that cabin looking for philosophy. I didn't go searching for Stoicism or Rumi or God. I went because I had run out of noise. And when the noise dies, you start hearing something else, the truth. It's not poetic, it's not easy, it's just quiet. And sometimes quiet is the loudest thing in the world. That was the beginning, and not of a retreat, not of an escape, but of something deeper. The start of a journey into silence, a journey into myself, and whether I was ready or not, it had already begun. I got off the plane in Oregon and with no real plan. One backpack, one worn-out copy of Rumi. No return flight. The rental car felt foreign under my hands, like I was driving someone else's life. The directions to the cabin were vague, 20 miles off the main road, then up a gravel path past a shuttered ranger station through a clearing with no cell towers in sight. That was the point. I didn't come here for inspiration. I came to escape the noise, or maybe to see what was left when the noise was gone. It was late afternoon when I arrived. The cabin sat alone, surrounded by towering pine trees and the stillness. I wasn't ready for no hum of traffic, no voices, no screens glowing in the background, just wind through the needles and my own breath. That first night I didn't unpack. I didn't explore. I just sat on the edge of the narrow bed looking around at the wooden walls, the fireplace, the silence, and then I panicked. Not the big dramatic kind. This was subtle. It was in my fingers twitching toward a phone that wasn't buzzing, in the part of me that wanted to turn on a TV just to hear something familiar. But there was no service, no reception, nothing but me alone. And when I say alone, I don't mean lonely, not yet. I mean stripped, no title, no status, no one to perform for, nothing to distract me from myself. The first 2 days blurred together. I tried to make it feel normal. Made coffee, went on walks, even cooked breakfast like I was on some kind of vacation. But I wasn't, because no matter what I did, the silence kept creeping in. It wasn't peaceful at first. It was sharp, confrontational. I found myself pacing for no reason, talking to the ceiling. I even laughed once just to hear a voice, even if it was mine. It's funny how quickly comfort becomes dependency. The noise I thought I hated. I had built my life around it, and now without it, I didn't know who I was. On the third night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside picked up, brushing against the windows like fingertips. The fireplace crackled. My breath was loud in the room, and then somewhere around 2 a.m. I heard something. Not from outside, from within. A memory. My father's voice, sharp and cold, telling me at 12 years old, "Don't just sit there, do something." I didn't remember what I was doing, just that I was still. And stillness wasn't acceptable. That was the root of it. The reason I couldn't stop moving, couldn't stop proving. Stillness had never felt safe. I grabbed my journal, the one Jason gave me before I left, and opened it for the first time. I didn't write anything wise. I didn't reflect or process. I just scribbled the Rumi quote again and again. Don't go back to sleep. It didn't feel like poetry anymore. It felt like a warning, because I could feel it happening. My mind wanted to numb itself, to escape back into dreams, to return to the fake comfort of distraction. But part of me, something deeper, was waking up. And it wasn't gentle. The next morning, I took the journal outside with my coffee. I sat on the cabin's small wooden steps and stared out into the trees. Fog hung low like a secret. The air was crisp, biting alive. I wrote 2 words: control what you can. It was something I'd read in a quote from Epictetus. Once I didn't understand it. Then I was starting to. Now I couldn't control the thoughts that rose, couldn't silence the memories or fears or shame that started to surface in the quiet. But I could choose how to sit with them. I could choose not to run. That's when the real work began. Every morning after that, I wrote, not for clarity, not for healing. Just to see. I wrote what I felt without filtering, without judgment. Some days I wrote, I'm scared. Other days I wrote nothing but my own name over and over, trying to remember who that was, without achievements next to it. The silence started to change shape. It wasn't just empty anymore. It became a space, a mirror, a weight. Sometimes it felt like pressure pressing in on me. Other times, like the sky had cracked open above me, revealing something infinite. It was around day 6 when I cracked. I don't know what triggered it, a dream maybe, or nothing at all. I stood in front of the small bathroom mirror and didn't recognize my own face. Not because it looked different, but because it looked honest and unmasked. I said aloud quietly, like I was telling a secret, I don't know who I am without the noise. And then I broke, tears came. Slow, steady, not loud, not dramatic. They just were. I didn't resist. I didn't question. I let it happen. Because for the first time, I understood what Jason meant. Stillness wasn't peace, it was truth. And truth demands you lay everything down. That night, I lit a fire, sat by it, and read the Rumi book for real. Not skimming, not quoting, just listening. One line struck me harder than the rest. A little while alone in your room will prove more valuable than anything else that could ever be given you. It wasn't metaphor anymore, it was medicine. And that's how the shift began. Not with revelation, not with some perfect Instagram moment of healing, just with honesty and with silence that didn't scare me as much as it used to. I still felt the ache, but now I wasn't trying to fill it. I was learning to sit with it, to breathe through it, to be, because sometimes the only way forward is through, and the only way to see is to stop looking. The silence had stopped being loud. Now it was something else, heavy, dense, like a rain that settled not outside me, but in me. A week into my stay at the cabin, everything I thought I'd escaped started coming back. Not through headlines or notifications, but through memory. The kind of memory that creeps in without asking, that doesn't knock, that doesn't wait for permission. At night, I started waking up drenched in sweat, not from nightmares, at least none I could remember, but from some internal tremor, like a part of me I'd ignored was finally stirring. I thought silence would bring me peace. But what it brought was exposure without the distractions. There was nothing shielding me from myself. No roles, no noise, no performance, only the raw version of me. And honestly, I didn't know how to be with him. The storm came on a Thursday, not a metaphorical one. A real storm, heavy wind, blackout, level rain, the kind that makes you feel like the world is being reset from the outside in. I had no power, no phone, no internet, just a few candles and the old fireplace which took forever to light. I should have felt nervous, but what I felt was hollow. Not in a bad way, more like stripped down, like something had finally broken through the static, and all that was left was whatever was true. I sat on the floor next to the fire and I asked a question out loud that I hadn't had the courage to say before. What if everything I built was just to keep me from feeling this? I didn't expect an answer, but what happened next felt close. I stood to grab a blanket and noticed a small pull-down ladder in the ceiling of the hallway, the kind that led to an attic. I hadn't noticed it before. Or maybe I had, and I just wasn't ready to look. But something nudged me to climb up. The attic was dusty, unfinished, full of spider webs and old wood. But tucked behind an old rocking chair was a wooden box, heavy like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside were letters, dozens of them, yellowed, handwritten, folded with care. They were signed by someone named Walter Pierce, a former Marine and Vietnam vet, according to a faded photo clipped to the top letter. The letters weren't to anyone, they were to himself. Journals, reflections, pieces of a man trying to make sense of what life had done to him and what he had done to life. One line struck me so hard I had to sit down. Only stillness shows you what remains. He wrote it in ink that had nearly faded, and right below it, a quote I recognized. The wound is the place where the light enters you, Rumi. And then in block letters, under that, Seneca was right. It's not what happens to us, it's how we respond. I stayed in the attic for hours, reading, listening, breathing. It felt like I was being handed a mirror, one that spanned generations. Walter had fought a different war, but his inner battle, it was the same as mine, trying to be whole again, trying to rebuild meaning from ruin. What struck me wasn't just how honest he was, it was how still he had become by the end. His last letter said, I thought the war was my story, but the real war started when the noise ended. I closed the box and whispered, thank you. That night, the wind howled like it was dragging ghosts across the trees. I couldn't sleep, so I sat in the dark, wrapped in a blanket, listening. Not just to the wind, but to everything inside me that had been trying to get my attention for years. The guilt, the shame, the silent pressure I'd carried since I was a kid to prove I was worth something, to be enough. But what if Stoicism wasn't about being tough? What if it was about being truthful? About standing still in the storm and saying, yes, this is mine and I won't run from it anymore. Around 4 a.m., I stepped outside. The rain had stopped. Everything was wet and breathing. I looked up at the sky stars between clouds, and I said for the first time, I'm tired of hiding. Not from the world, from myself, from the part of me that still didn't know how to be loved unless I was accomplishing something, from the part of me that thought pain made me broken when really pain had made me honest. That was the night I stopped seeking answers and started sitting with the questions, not to solve them, but to live with them. Because the truth is, I wasn't here to fix myself. I was here to face myself, and when I did, something softened. Not everything, but enough. Enough to breathe easier, enough to sleep without fear of what I'd see, enough to start believing that stillness wasn't the enemy. It was the teacher I'd been avoiding. In the morning, I went back to the attic one last time, took one of Walter's letters, the one with the Rumi and Seneca quotes. I folded it carefully and slid it into my journal. Not to keep it, but to carry it like a compass, like proof that even strangers can hold light for each other across time. That day I wrote in my own words, the void is not a punishment. It's a passage, because now I understood the void wasn't emptiness. It was the space where false identities die, where we stop being who we think we need to be and start becoming who we already are. Something changed after the attic. It wasn't loud. There wasn't a light bulb moment or an emotional breakthrough you'd see in a movie. It was quieter than that, more subtle, but also more permanent. I woke up the next morning, and for the first time since arriving at the cabin, I didn't reach for anything. Not my phone, not a book, not even my journal. I just sat on the edge of the bed, still wrapped in the warmth of sleep, and I listened to the wind through the trees, the ticking of the wall clock, the rhythm of my own breath, and it felt enough. I didn't need to fix anything, didn't need to solve my life. I just needed to be. That morning, I started a ritual. Nothing complicated. I'd make a cup of tea, open the windows, and sit at the small wooden table by the front window. Then I'd breathe 5 seconds in, hold, 7 seconds out, over and over, not to control my thoughts, but to observe them. At first, they came in fast and loud, like a freeway of noise I'd been ignoring for years. Regret, shame, lists of what I hadn't done, people I thought I'd disappointed, but I didn't push them away. I just watched. And eventually they started to quiet. It felt like sweeping dust out of a room. The more I stayed present, the clearer the floor became. I began reading Epictetus in the afternoons, one passage at a time. No rushing, just one idea I could sit with. One day it was this: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. I wrote that in my journal, underlined it twice, and sat with the discomfort that followed. Because I realized how many years I'd spent blaming circumstances, my job, my parents, my ex, the economy, for how I felt inside. But the truth, no one could give me peace if I wasn't willing to stop outsourcing my pain. That hit hard because it meant responsibility, but also freedom. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror again. This time not to judge, just to witness. My eyes were clearer, my face more relaxed. There were still shadows under my eyes, but I wasn't ashamed of them. They were evidence of the weight I'd been carrying, of the honesty I was now willing to hold. And in that stillness, I whispered something that surprised me. I forgive you, not to someone else, to me, for pushing so hard, for always needing to prove something, for being afraid to slow down, to rest, to feel. Later that day, I took a walk deeper into the woods behind the cabin. No headphones, no phone, just the sound of gravel under my boots and the crunch of dried leaves beneath the trees. I remembered a line from Marcus Aurelius: "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And I realized I was finally starting to find that place, not just around me, but within me. I didn't need to go anywhere. I just needed to stop running. That night I wrote a letter, not for anyone to read, just to release. It was to my mother. She passed when I was 20. But I never really let myself grieve her, not properly. I always felt like I had to be strong. For my dad, for my younger brother, for myself, but that strength became a wall, a way to stay busy so I didn't have to feel. In the letter, I told her everything. How I missed her. How I wished she'd seen the man I became, both the one who worked too hard and the one who was now learning how to rest. I didn't cry, I just breathed. And for once, that felt like enough. The next morning, I reread something Walter had written in one of his attic letters. "You are not your past. You are the one who sees it." That stuck with me, because I'd spent so much of my life believing that my scars were my identity, but now I saw them differently. They were maps, proof that I'd traveled, that I'd survived, that I was still here. I wasn't broken, I was becoming whole, and wholeness didn't mean perfection, it meant honesty. I started doing something new each morning. After tea, before reading, I'd stand barefoot outside the cabin just for a minute, feel the cold earth, hear the wind, watch the trees sway, and I'd say out loud, "This moment is enough." It wasn't a mantra. It was a reminder that control was an illusion, that the only real power I had was over how I chose to show up right here, right now. That's what Stoicism was teaching me. Not how to escape pain, but how to hold it without losing myself. It's strange what starts to change when you begin living from that place. Food tastes different. Slower, more vivid conversations in your head become kinder, and time stops feeling like something to outrun. It becomes something to meet, one breath at a time, one thought at a time, one truth at a time. In the stillness, I started to see who I'd been, but more importantly, I started to see who I could become. Not someone bigger or louder or more successful, but someone present, someone steady, someone who could walk into chaos without becoming it, someone who could witness their own life without needing to control every inch of it. And so on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I wrote something simple at the top of a clean page. Stillness is not the absence of life, it's where life begins to speak. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to listen. Coming back to the city felt like stepping into a different frequency. New York hadn't changed, but I had. The moment I stepped off the train at Penn Station, I could feel it, an invisible current buzzing beneath my skin. People rushed past earbuds and eyes glazed over. Phones out, shoulders tense. Everyone in motion, no one really here. And just like that, I felt the old pull. The itch to check my phone, to respond, to reinsert myself into the rhythm of noise. But I didn't. Instead, I closed my eyes for a breath. Right there in the middle of the crowd, and I reminded myself, control what you can. The apartment I'd left 2 weeks earlier looked exactly the same. Same half-read books stacked by the bed. Same pair of running shoes I never wore. Same wall calendars, still flipped to the wrong month, but the energy felt different. Not because the space had changed, because I unpacked slowly, not just the bag I carried, but the new way of seeing. I'd brought back with me, the city wasn't the enemy. The noise wasn't evil. The issue had never been the world. It was how I showed up in it, and I was finally learning how to stay steady, no matter how loud it got. The next morning, I walked to my old cafe, the one where the barista always misspelled my name. I used to scroll while I waited in line. Email, Twitter, anything to keep my brain busy. But this time I just stood still, watched the way sunlight fell across the countertop, listened to the clink of cups, felt the hum of conversation around me. And when the barista handed me my drink, spelled wrong, of course I just smiled, because that moment, that ordinary, forgettable moment, it felt alive. Later that week, I visited my office, not to return, just to close the loop. I stepped off the elevator into that familiar hallway, the polished glass, the buzzing fluorescent lights, the tension that always sat in my chest like a brick. A few coworkers looked up from their screens. One waved, but most kept typing, and I realized something I used to chase, belonging here. Validation, approval, that hit of worth every time someone said, "Great work, but now," I didn't need it. Not because I was better, but because I finally understood that my value doesn't depend on anyone else seeing it. I met with my manager that afternoon. She asked how I was doing. I said honestly, better slower, clearer. I told her I wouldn't be coming back. Not with anger, not with regret, just truth. She nodded, told me I was brave, but I didn't feel brave. I felt free. That night, I sat on my fire escape, watching the lights flicker across the skyline, and I thought about Jason. My brother, the one who told me silence would break me before it built me. I hadn't called him yet. Didn't know how to explain everything without sounding like I joined a monastery. But that weekend, he texted me, "You in town?" I replied. "Yeah, you free tomorrow?" He said, "Come by." Jason's apartment was exactly how I remembered it. Tidy, quiet, minimal. He opened the door, nodded once, and gestured me in. We didn't hug. We're not really that type. But there was something in his eyes, like he saw the shift, like he knew. We sat on the couch drinking black coffee in silence. And for a long time, neither of us said a word. But it didn't feel awkward. It felt sacred, like neither of us needed to perform, like presence was enough. Eventually, he broke the silence. "You look lighter." I nodded. "Feels that way." He asked what happened out there, I said. "I stopped running, faced the parts of me I didn't want to see." He nodded again. Didn't ask for more. And then to my surprise, he started talking, really talking about his time overseas, the things he still dreams about, the guilt, the silence that haunted him long after the war ended. I didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it. I just listened, because I knew now that's what presence really is. It's not saying the right thing, it's holding space when someone finally stops pretending. That conversation changed something. Not just for him, for me, because in that moment I realized the depth of this journey wasn't just for me to carry. It was meant to be shared. Not through advice, not through answers, but through being, through showing up, through stillness. Over the next few days, I moved through the city differently. Slower, I made eye contact with strangers. I thanked people more. I didn't try to fill the gaps in conversation. Didn't rush to offer opinions. Just watched. Like I had in the woods. Only now the forest was made of buildings and people and sound. And I realized stillness isn't a place, it's a practice. And presence is portable. The transformation wasn't flashy. There were no grand announcements, no viral posts, just a quiet shift from being on edge to being on purpose, from reacting to responding, from grasping to letting go. One night I opened my journal again and I wrote a single sentence. You don't need to escape the world to be free in it, because that's what Stoicism had given me. Not a way out, but a way through. A way to walk back into the noise and remain unshaken, to return not as who I was, but as who I had always been underneath the layers I'd mistaken for identity. A few weeks after coming back to the city, I found myself standing in front of a small community center in Brooklyn. It wasn't planned. I'd seen a flyer near the coffee shop. Men's journaling group, Wednesdays at 6 p.m., beginners welcome. And something in me said, go. Not to lead, not to teach, just to listen, just to show up. That had become my compass. Now showing up with presence, not performance. The room was quiet when I entered, mismatched chairs. Coffee in paper cups, a few guys nodding at each other like they didn't know if they were allowed to be here. I took a seat in the back and just breathed. The facilitator, a guy named Daryl, probably in his late 50s, welcomed everyone. He said we weren't here to solve anything. We were here to see, to slow down, to speak if we felt called, or just to write, and so we did. For an hour, the room was filled with the sound of pens scratching across paper. No music. No agenda, just space. When it ended, I stayed behind to help stack the chairs. Daryl looked at me and said, "You've sat in silence before." I nodded. He smiled. It shows. Then he asked something I didn't expect. Ever thought about leading a group of your own? At first, I hesitated, but then I remembered Walter's letter. I remembered Jason on that couch, and I realized this journey wasn't meant to end with me. It was meant to pass through me. 3 weeks later, I started my own group in a quiet room above a library on the Lower East Side. Not many people came at first, 4 then 6, but it didn't matter, because each person that walked through that door came with the same quiet ache. I once carried the need to be still, seen, and not judged, and my job wasn't to fix that, it was to honor it. I didn't teach philosophy. I just shared what I'd learned. That silence is not absence, it's presence. That pain is not weakness, it's an opening. And that the flame we're all looking for, it doesn't live outside us. It is us, buried beneath everything we've been taught to be. At the end of each session, I would read one line aloud, a quote, a reflection, a reminder. One night I chose Rumi, the same line that found me in that bookstore when I was still half asleep in my own life. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. And this time, when I said it, I finally understood it. It wasn't about sunrise or poetry. It was about awakening to the life we've been given, to the self we keep avoiding, to the stillness that never left us. I kept Walter's letter in my journal. Sometimes I'd read from it in the group. His words about stillness, Seneca, the war he fought inside. And every time I did, I felt like his voice was still here, not haunting me, helping me, because that's what wisdom does. It doesn't expire, it echoes. One evening after group, a young guy, early 20s maybe, hung back while the others left. He didn't say much during the session, but now his voice shook just enough to let me know this mattered. How long did it take to not feel broken anymore? I looked at him, not with answers, but with the kind of honesty I would have wanted at his age. I still feel it sometimes, but I don't fight it like I used to. He nodded and I told him, stillness isn't about being fixed. It's about being with what's real, and what's real doesn't need fixing. He smiled through tears, then walked out into the night. And I sat there alone feeling something settle in me, something strong and still and steady. That night, I wrote the last entry in that same journal Jason had given me. Just one sentence: you are not the storm. You are the one who stands still inside it. In the weeks that followed, my days became simpler. I'd wake up early, drink tea, walk slowly, smile often. I wasn't trying to build a brand, go viral, or prove anything. I was just living fully present, honest. Sometimes I'd pass by that old bookstore, the one where it all started. I never went in again because I didn't need to. I carried the lesson with me now. Not in my pocket, in my being. When people ask me what changed, I don't say much. I just tell them this. Listen to Rumi for 30 minutes and then sit with what it stirs in you. That's where the journey begins. But here's what I don't always say. It's not about Rumi. It's not about the quote. It's about you. It's about what's underneath all the noise, all the masks, all the fear. That quiet place no one else sees, that place, that's where the flame lives, not the kind that burns down, the kind that burns through. And now when I feel lost, which still happens, because I'm human, I don't run, I don't scroll, I don't numb, I breathe, I watch, I wait, because now I know the truth. Stillness isn't the absence of chaos. It's the choice to remain rooted inside it. And in that choice, we become the flame.